Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Sunday evening. On behalf of Concord Indivisible Steering Committee, we welcome you to our very first candidate forum. My name is Jennifer Hurley-Wales. I will be the host for this evening's event. A quick word about Concord Indivisible for those who are new to us. Concord Indivisible is a progressive activist group that began in 2016. We are over 1,500 people from Concord and the surrounding communities dedicated to promoting long-held Concord values that center around people, the planet, and democracy. Our role in local and statewide primary elections is not to endorse, but to introduce the candidates to you, our community, and give you an opportunity to engage with them through events like this Zoom platform. Since we have new districts with a new configuration and new people running, this is especially important. We don't think of this event as a debate. This will be a moderated discussion, and we have lots of participants. So let's establish the following rules of the road that will help us get through the ample information we want to cover tonight. At the start, candidates will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Then for approximately 45 minutes, candidates will be asked a series of questions. The questions will center around our values of people, planet, and democracy. Each candidate will have a minute to answer. And so let me introduce you to Concord Indivisible Anita Saville, who will be asking questions of you tonight. Anita, wave and say hello. You will see. Great.
Hello.
You will see a clock on the screen. The clock's lighting system will give our candidate a green, yellow, and red light indicating their time. And we might be moving to, instead of the clock, a warning system. It looks like we're going to have a green, yellow, or red color that will indicate your time. Thanks to CI Steering Committee member Judith Herman, who will be running the clock system for us. So we just want to say we really appreciate the spirit of civility that has been maintained in the several forums that have taken place to date, and we anticipate the same spirit tonight. For the last half hour, we will take questions from the audience, and here's the way this will work. Chat will be dedicated for your questions throughout the evening and will only be visible to our chat moderator behind the scenes. Julie Hirschler. Julie, wave and say hello.
Oh.
Julie is going to be the one who will present your questions from the audience. Please post questions, audience members, anytime. The question should be relevant for all the candidates to answer. We will do our best to address as many questions as possible. This forum will be recorded and will be available on request. CI is the owner of the video, and it can only be used in its entirety. So please, also, no photos. They're distracting. And as you've noticed, one more thing, all of the audience video cameras and mics are off, and you are only seeing the CI event participants and the candidates on screen. Finally, let's meet our candidates. Concord Indivisible invited all of the candidates running from both parties. Before you tonight are the candidates who accepted the invitation. Candidates, will you each say your name, where you live, and what district you are running in? We will start with Vivian Birchall and go alphabetically by last name.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity, Concord Indivisible. My name is Vivian Birchall. I live in Acton, and I am running for the 14th Middlesex District.
Great. Simon.
Hi, everyone. Simon Cataldo. Thanks to Concord Indivisible. I live in Concord, and I am running in the 14th Middlesex District.
Carmen.
Good evening. My name is Carmine Gentile. I live in Sudbury, and I'm running for the 13th Middlesex District.
Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Wotjas. I live in Chelmsford, and I am running for the 14th Middlesex District.
Thank you. We're really glad that Carmine Gentile could be with us tonight, though he's running unopposed. Many of us are new in his district and are eager to meet him. So over to you to begin the questions, Anita.
Thank you, Jen. We'd like to start by having each candidate give us a brief 1-minute opening statement, going alphabetically and starting with Vivian.
Hello, my name is Vivian Birchall. I'm a mother of 2 in elementary school. We're 7 and 10, and an older daughter in England. I work for Acton TV. I'm a producer and a host about issues in and around our communities. I'm a co-operator for Emerson Hospital. I previously worked in the town of Acton in the building and planning department. I work as a volunteer with United Way, and I'm on the board for also the Acton Memorial Library Foundation. Anti-corruption work is how I got into policy, working with the legislative body in Uganda, mobilizing legislators to pass anti-corruption and transparency legislation, and then worked on with the government of Uganda's National Planning Authority to plan for comprehensive planning for the country. I'm a huge advocate of restorative justice with a project that I volunteered with when I lived in Hawaii with the prosecuting attorney's office. But most importantly, I'm a naturalized citizen of the United States, coming from Uganda, and I'm running to be the next state representative for the 14th Middlesex District.
Vivian, thank you very much. Simon?
Thank you, Concord Indivisible. Thank you to everyone who's watching, and thank you to my fellow candidates. It is now clear that the next battles to protect our rights, our planet, and our democracy will be waged in the state legislatures. The only questions are, will Massachusetts lead, and will we deliver effective government to our residents? When I prosecuted Sheriff Joe Arpaio with the United States Justice Department, when I taught special education students in Harlem, and when I grew Harlem Lacrosse into a national nonprofit for at-risk youth, I learned the power of communities solving problems. And this is the community I love the most. I was raised here, bar mitzvahed here, and graduated from our public schools. My wife, Jessie, and I are raising our toddlers here. And I believe in our district's ability to effectively address our collective challenges through vigorous advocacy in the state legislature. I look forward to discussing the issues with all of you tonight.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmine Gentile. I represent the 13th Middlesex District and ask you to re-elect me later this year. I welcome Concord and Lincoln residents to the district, joining Sudbury, Wayland, and Marlborough. Our legislator's time is expended in 3 areas. Constituent services is 1, local aid and home rule petitions another, and statewide legislation and the budget the 3rd. I enjoy integrating my work at the local, state, and national levels to achieve results which will benefit us now and in years to come, and in terms of better and less expensive healthcare, education, housing, transportation, robust economic development, and environmental protection, while always looking through the lens of climate change. I want to thank Concord Indivisible for bringing us together tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Pat?
Thank you, Anita. My name is Pat Wotjas. As mentioned earlier, I live in Chelmsford. This is where I grew up. I've spent most of my time here, so I'm very familiar with this area. I attended the University of Massachusetts in Amherst and received a degree in economics. And I also received, through the ROTC program at UMass Amherst, a commission to the United States Air Force. I served on active duty in the Air Force, and they taught me how to program computers, and that led to a career in technology consulting, which I stayed up to date with until the fairly recent past. I've been on the select board in the town of Chelmsford for over 13 years now, so I'm very familiar with municipal government. I know how it works. I know the challenges. I know the concerns. I know the issues that come with working in municipal government. So I'm looking forward to this forum this evening, so we can see what differences there are between the candidates here. And again, thank you, Concord Indivisible, for inviting us.
Thank you, everyone. We will now ask each of you a series of questions that reflect our emphasis on people, planet, and democracy. You will have 1 minute to answer. There are also a couple of short answer getting to know you questions that we'd like you to answer in 1 or 2 words. We'll continue to rotate alphabetically, and I'll prompt you, each of you in turn. The first question relates to our supporting democratic institutions. A lack of transparency in our state government leads to dysfunction. For example, we don't know who voted for what and which bills have been sent to study and remain there indefinitely. What are the first steps you would take toward prompting maximum transparency? And we'll start this time with Simon.
Thank you, Anita, for that question. I think that transparency and accountability and the lack thereof is one of the main reasons why we are experiencing such challenges regarding our trust in government right now. If I'm elected, I'll be the only person in the State House, in the House of Reps, who's ever prosecuted a public corruption case. I'm experienced with campaign finance law with my work at the DOJ, and I think that will be a helpful perspective to lend to the legislature. I'm going to continue along with the tradition that is left by our predecessor, Tammy Gouveia, who was a champion on these issues. I will be completely transparent in my committee votes. I will stand for roll call, and I will work to professionalize the legislative staff so that we can disperse power within the State House and make it a place that is really more small d democratic.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Thank you very much. So transparency is very important, and that's why I was one of 17 Democrats to stand up a couple of years ago to ask for a rule change to allow for all of our committee votes to be recorded and so that the public could see them, and also to give us some time to see what we're voting on, rather than several hours, several days. But you see, the question asked about stated that right now people can't see how people vote. Under the current joint rules in the legislature, I believe that all committee votes are recorded, in the sense that those people who are present are recorded, those people who vote in the negative are recorded. So it's not difficult to actually to see how people vote if one looks to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Welcome.
Pat?
Yeah, thanks for that question, and I applaud Carmen for standing up for transparency in the state legislature. It definitely is needed. Some of the things that happen there, if the same protocols were taken in a select board meeting in Chelmsford, the Attorney General would be punishing the select board for doing things in secret. I think that it needs to be transparent. Committee hearings need to be open to the public and need to be publicized a lot more than they are. And as what happened at the end of this most recent session, where so much was held up until the last possible minute. I mean, they even went beyond when I guess legally they were supposed to. They called August 1st, really July 31st, in order to get away with some of the things that they did, which again, there has to be a better way to do the work throughout the year in a comprehensive and effective manner so that the work gets done that needs to get done.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
Yeah, so it's again an important issue. First of all, I want to say I'm proud to be endorsed by two organizations that are really working hard to advocate for the transparency of our legislature. That is Act on Mass and Incorruptible Mass and Progressive Mass and many others. So as somebody, my introduction to public policy was with the legislative body, and my job was to mobilize legislators to pass anti-corruption laws. And I'm proud to be one of the people who pushed for the country's passing for the first access to information legislation in Uganda. So I want to bring similar experience with how we mobilize legislators to the State House. We did it by making, doing a lot of sensitization among legislators, just to see how make them realize the impact of the inaction. And this is what happened in the last session. So I am all for public transparency. I have worked with transparency both at national levels and international levels, and I'm ready to do the job.
Vivian, thank you. Our next question also has to do with democracy. Under what conditions have you accepted or would you not accept a campaign donation? Have you or would you accept super PAC contributions or those made by groups that do not disclose the identities of their donors? And this time we will start with Pat. I'm sorry, this time we will start with Carmen.
Thank you. So I don't believe I've ever received a donation from a super PAC, and I don't see myself doing that in the future. Some time ago, I received some large donations from a couple of people I didn't know. And I said, well, wait a second. Before I even deposited them, I looked to see who they were, and okay, they were fine. They were good Democrats. I also am a leader in the area of campaign finance. The Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission case that came out of the Supreme Court 11 years ago changed our campaign finance law in the United States after over 200 years. And I've introduced legislation for a constitutional amendment on that. And I've also a member of the Citizens Commission that the folks at the ballot asked to be put together. I'm one of those commissioners working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
Thanks for that question. I have never accepted a donation from a political action committee, even in my runs for a select board or other local races. I make sure I know who it is that's giving me cash or a check. So everybody that's made a donation to me, I've met them and know them personally. I think it is important for the political action committees to know who is, to be able to identify who donates to them, so that we know how this money, the money that's getting to the candidate, where it's coming from, even though it may be coming through a political action committee. So I would be very wary of accepting any money from a PAC. I would have to really be aware of what it is they stand for before I would even consider accepting something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
I will not accept money from a super PAC. And, I've run a grassroots campaign, and I have learned and valued, the grassroots way of fundraising. And, now there is a lot of conversation about people who are in the fossil fuel industry funding campaigns. I promise to never get money from a fossil fuel company. There are certain organizations that I can never get money from that if it affects the well-being of the people.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
So I think it's good to highlight some things that Massachusetts is doing well. We have a really great state agency, the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, that makes all of our campaign contributions completely public. You can go online and see them. I don't accept super PAC funding. I have accepted, as have other candidates in this forum, PAC funding from organizations. So for me, it's the Massachusetts Nurses Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the AFL-CIO, the Laborers Union, and the Carmen's Union, which is the transportation workers. And the maximum in Massachusetts is $500. So I've received $500 or less from those organizations. We have a good campaign finance system within the confines of what the Supreme Court has permitted. It is transparent. I would like to see super PACs be illegal. Unfortunately, we do have candidates on both sides of the aisle that receive a significant amount of super PAC support. That is legal, but it is not what we should be doing. And we need to do everything we can, as Representative Gentile has, to work on the federal level and overturn Citizens United.
Thank you, Simon. All right, our next question is one of our short answer, getting to know you questions. And the question is, what is your favorite book or author? And we're going to start this one with Pat.
Well, I don't know that I have a favorite. It's funny, the Chelmsford Friends of the Library, I know this is supposed to be a quick answer, but the Chelmsford Friends of the Library last year, since they couldn't have a regular book sale, they did these pop-up book sales where you would go and you would buy a bag of books that would have like 6 or 7 books in it for $5. You didn't know what you were getting. And I was so glad I did that because I read books that I never, ever would have even picked up off the shelf before. So, but to kind of be, I guess, Concord-centric, since that's what the audience here, I'm getting ready to read Doris Kearns Goodwin's Team of Rivals. I'm looking forward to reading that. So that's my favorite for right now.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
My favorite, it's a novel. It's A Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. That, it showed perseverance, struggle, community, so much, that inspired me. And even when I was exploring running for office, I thought of his leadership and how he brought people together. And it's my favorite by a long shot.
Vivian, thank you. Simon?
The Color of Water by James McBride.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Anything you ever wanted to know about whales, Herman Melville's Moby Dick. I just got another copy recently.
Thank you, Carmen. All right, our next 1-minute question is an education question. The current early education and care bill, which was passed by the Senate and is now in the House, addresses the affordability and sustainability of early childhood programs that had seriously eroded during the COVID crisis. For next steps, what would you now propose to build the quality of early childhood education in Massachusetts?
Oh, you froze.
Yeah, you froze.
Did you hear the question, Vivian?
You froze toward the end, but
Okay.
what are
So
the
the question is, for next steps, what would you now propose to build the quality of early education in Massachusetts?
One, I have had numerous conversations, one with the SEIU labor union that works with educators, and some of the issues that come out is the low pay for educators, early childhood educators. As a next step, we need to increase this how much is paid to these teachers, because that way we'll retain those who are in the service and also attract new educators, early childhood educators. In addition to that, make sure that every family understands what are the provisions that this legislation gives, either by translating the language into one that they understand, since many of the families that are affected are immigrant families. I think it will be very critical to make sure that they get that information. And third, to work with the people already in the industry in early childhood to understand what the specific challenges and fund those specific challenges that they are facing.
Vivian, thank you. Simon.
Right now, the biggest problem with our childcare quality is attrition within the profession. So we need to, yes, increase teacher pay. We also need to look creatively at the way that we're funding education and incentivizing getting into the profession. So giving ahead of time, making promises in terms of student loans and how we will repay them as a Commonwealth if somebody stays in that profession, and also making sure that we're properly supporting the healthcare benefits and other benefits of the people who are working in that profession. Acutely relevant to this is mental health care in Massachusetts. The people working on our front lines, including in our childcare industry, are really struggling, many of them with mental health, and we need to make sure that mental health care is more affordable and accessible in our system.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
So we need to raise the pay for childcare workers, and we need to lower the cost of childcare. Speaker Nancy Pelosi appeared with our other congresswomen, Massachusetts Congresswoman at Tufts a few years ago, and spoke of legislation, which hasn't been passed yet, to limit childcare expense to basically 7% of a family's income. So a family earning $100,000 or less would be pay $7,000 and maximum, and people earning less money would pay even less. We really need to have free education in this country at all levels. In Western Europe, they've had free higher education since the 1970s, and people in each of our districts are getting college educations, master's, bachelor's, and doctorate degrees in Europe right now for free. They welcome us. We need to do the same here at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. And Pat.
Thank you. So I agree with what everybody has said. I think it comes down obviously to money. We definitely need to increase the pay for teachers at all levels, quite frankly. And we need to bring more into that profession. I think in the past couple of years, through the so-called Great Resignation, we've seen a lot of talented teachers become frustrated and leave the profession, which is a tremendous disadvantage to schools everywhere. So we need to do everything we can to get more folks involved in early childhood education, get the better training, and as Carmen said, maintain the free education opportunity for everybody, all the way up through and including through college.
Thank you, Pat. Our next question has to do with housing equity. There is high demand in our metro area for more affordable housing for individuals and families with low and medium incomes. What can the legislature do to ensure that community leaders in your district prioritize and respond to that need? And we'll start this question with Simon.
Really like the way that this question was phrased, Anita, because it focuses on our community leaders. And so much of what happens with housing happens on the town level. I think that we've been looking at this in many respects in the wrong way. We're all stick and no carrot. Let's incentivize our communities to come up with creative solutions for housing, whether it's accessory dwelling units, whether it's projects that are close to public transportation systems. And let's then fund those that are approved at town meeting at the state level. We need to be creative and tap into the creativity that exists in our town. We know that exists in Chelmsford, in Carlisle, in Concord, and in Acton. We have wonderful housing advocates. We need to be having an incentive-based mindset and not a mindset of unfunded mandates and punishments when it comes to statewide grants.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Thank you very much. So a few years ago, when Governor Baker first filed his bill for housing to change the zoning law so that a simple majority could change zoning in order to increase housing in the Commonwealth, I welcomed him to that committee meeting and told him I thought he had a fine bill. And the contents of that bill were finally enacted just a few months ago. We need to do all that we can at the local level. In addition to being state representative, I'm also chair of the Sudbury Housing Trust. We help people with maintain their homes, and we try to create new housing. I was recently able to get $75,000 from the legislature to help people with 1 or 2 mortgage payments. We need to do all that we can. And I endorse what has previously been said. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
I agree with what Carmen said about the change in the zoning rules as far as a town meeting vote. That only needs to be a simple majority versus a 2/3 vote like it used to be in order to do some zoning changes. I think we've already seen in Chelmsford the effects of that, and they've been positive. And I think some of the parts of the so-called MBTA communities initiative will help. But again, as Simon alluded to, a lot of that is the stick approach and not the carrot approach. We don't hear much about the benefits that you get by following all the requirements and criteria for to qualify as an MBTA community, all the things that are required for that. But we do hear what you're not going to be eligible for if you don't follow the guidelines and have a plan and then stick to the plan. So I think it behooves us to use incentives. We definitely do need more affordable housing, not just in this area, but the entire Commonwealth.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
Yeah, in addition to what everyone else has mentioned, I just want to add that we also need to change the lending policies, especially for immigrants, because they are not favorable for immigrants to actually buy homes, even those that are existing. So we need to look deeper as legislators. I want to make sure that we look into that, and they're not, and the discriminatory lending policies as well. Some of them are really predatory, and they take more incomes away from these households, all these families. And in addition to that, look at transportation. We are all congregating in certain areas because they are convenient to move to and from. But if we improve public transportation, then we are going to open up housing in other areas where people, so it's a holistic issue. I'm looking at other enablers for housing as part of the solution.
Thank you, Vivian. All right, we now have our second getting to know you question. 1 or 2 words if you can. Who's your personal heroine or hero? Starting with Carmen.
Well, I'll tell you, Franklin Roosevelt. I think that what he did in the 1930s and 40s was remarkable, and we benefit from it today. And yeah, so he's my personal hero.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
I'm going to go more contemporary. Mine would be Hillary Clinton. In 2016, we had the most qualified person ever to run for president. And that person was Hillary Clinton. And I'm going to forever regret what happened that night.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
I'm gonna go more cliche, and but to me it's important. She is my everything. Yesterday was my dear mother's birthday, and she is my hero. She raised us through a very, very hard life, but she gave us the best education, and I am forever eternally grateful for her, who she is.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
My mom.
Thank you, Simon. All right, our next 1-minute question has to do with immigration justice. What steps would you favor to protect and assist immigrants, both documented and not? And we'll start this question with Pat.
I think we have to treat everybody equally. Bottom line, we hear so much about how immigrants are, there's so much prejudice, and I think we see it more and more now than we did in the not too distant past. We have to make it easier for them to get an education. We have to. I favor the law that was recently passed that allows undocumented immigrants to have a driver's license. I think that's a public safety issue, so I definitely favor that. But as has been mentioned in other forums that we've been in, so often immigrants are just prejudiced against so much in so many ways, as far as justice, as far as housing, as far as transportation. Even I saw something in the Globe today where not really an immigrant, but a black person had his house appraised, and it came out $1 amount, and then they hired the same appraisal to do the same appraisal company to do a subsequent appraisal, and a different person, a white man, was pretending to be the owner, and it came out with an appraisal that was hundreds of thousands of dollars higher. It goes right, absolutely to the economic situation of non-white folks in this country.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
There are a number of things that we can do. Just like Pat mentioned, the financial bit is real. The lenders are really brutal to immigrants. I wish we could change that. In addition to that, language, if we could translate lots of information that is, a necessity for immigrant communities who do not have English as their first language. I appreciate that because right now I'm speaking in my third language and I'm fortunate to be able to do that, but there are many who do not. And for services as easy as driver's licenses, when I was doing my driver's license test, the written test, I couldn't help thinking about the person who does not have English as their first language. So that is something that a service that would help us go a long way, that would help immigrant communities go a long way. In addition to that, just support civic education. It is important because when we come here, we're just learning about the different political systems. So investing in civic education helps us be engaged.
Vivian, thank you. Next is Simon.
I agree that language access is a really important part of the formula to making sure that we are a welcoming place and that our immigrant neighbors are able to flourish in our communities. And right now there is in the House Ways and Means Committee a bill that would create a framework for every single state agency in Massachusetts to improve language accessibility for all top languages that are used by our residents here and throughout Massachusetts, including, of course, in our district. We also need to pass the Safe Communities Act. I was watching a League of Women Voters forum from 2018, the last time this was an open seat, and the candidates were talking about how important that act is. It still hasn't happened. 187G was the type of agreement with the federal government that Sheriff Joe Arpaio used in Arizona to detain people based on their suspected Mexican immigration status, and we all knew what that really was. But that is still possible right here in Massachusetts, and it can happen the next time we have a Republican president, unless we pass the Safe Communities Act.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Yes, I would echo what others have said. The Safe Communities Act was a priority for the House Progressive Caucus. In the previous session, it was one of the only one of 4 major bills that we didn't get through, and we again tried to get it through this session, and we failed. And it's a very important bill. I would like to say that in Middlesex County, really we've been fortunate in that that prevails. I mean, it's de facto, it's not the law, but the reality is that the strictures of it are recognized by the police and the district attorney especially. And I'm very glad that we were able to get the Work and Family Mobility Act so that everyone can drive. When I say everyone, you have to have a valid passport showing that who you are. It's not so. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Our next question has to do with reproductive rights. The recently signed law protecting access to reproductive health care services in the Commonwealth did not address the fact that people under age 16 must still go before a judge if they don't have parental approval for an abortion. What is your position on this issue? Starting with Vivian.
I think that the people under 16 should be protected. And, we must be vigilant to protect rights for the girl child, to protect abortion rights, because all those who play a part, and to protect all those who play a part in abortion. And we just even need to go beyond that and protect the LGBTQ community, protect the, people who are in mixed marriages, because we are in a community where we need to be leaders in protecting the dignity of everyone in our community, and women's rights should be protected at all ages.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
I don't think that the 16-year-old age requirement is reflective of the complexities and the sometimes scary realities that somebody less than 16 may be going through when they're seeking an abortion, and they may not be able to get an abortion because of a dynamic that's happening in the household that really is not appropriate for that consent requirement from the parent. So I think we need to take that next step in Massachusetts. We need to aggressively look to be a helper state for abortion. And I think increasingly the next phase of this is going to be contraception rights. We have so many people of reproductive age here in Massachusetts at our colleges, at our universities, and otherwise who hail from states that will not or already do not have rights to reproductive care. We need to be on the vanguard of this issue. That includes the issue that you mentioned, Anita, and a variety of others.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Years ago, I practiced in the probate and family court full time. And I will tell you that it's difficult to get in front of a judge. It takes time. Those of us who pushed the Roe Act, and I was recognized as a Roe Act champion, tried to put that in, and we were not successful. Out of the 1,000, more than 1,000 hearings that have been held since that was the law, it's 2 or less cases that the judge said no. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that change. And thank you. I think any young person who requires. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
I agree. I think a child is younger than 16 that is in a situation that needs an abortion. Sometimes they may not have parents that are empathetic or compassionate to her situation, and it may be required to go basically around the parents. I'm sure, as Carmen said, there are not that many in that situation, but they do have to have that option in order to go some other way to get permission to get an abortion. Because if they're not old enough to have the judgment to make a decision about an abortion, they certainly are not qualified to raise a child. And regarding the other issues that Simon had mentioned about contraception or as Vivian said about LGBTQ rights that are next on the list, I think if we have to, then we need to amend the state's constitution so that privacy rights are not taken away the way that they seem to be on the road to be doing now.
Thank you, Pat. Our next question is a short answer question. What is your favorite style of music? Starting with Simon.
It really changes week to week. But recently I've been listening to a lot of reggae, in particular Modest Yahoo.
Carmen?
Yeah, I currently like to listen to country western. It's changed over the years from classical to jazz to country western.
Thank you. Pat?
I'm going to go with 80s rock.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
Does it have to be one? But I do love, surprise, surprise, I hope this doesn't kick but I love country music.
Thank you, Vivian. I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind our audience, please make sure to put your questions for the candidates in the chat box. The questions should be relevant to all candidates, and we will get to these shortly. Our next question has to do with a sustainable environment. Governor Baker just signed a major climate bill. The bill does not include funding for all the programs it creates. I'm sorry, I just lost my question here. Details could not be resolved because this Economic Development Act didn't make it out of the conference committee before the close of the session, and now negotiations are being relegated to informal sessions. How can you, as a legislator, promote a continued attention to provide funding for this act? And we will start with Simon.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate that we are where we are. Climate is going to be my first priority when I'm a member of the legislature, if the people of our district send me there. We need to be funding every single mandate, and we need to be doing more than that. We need to be looking at what is the next step. And part of this is about a funding issue, and part of this is also about permitting our localities to become leaders and incubators of innovation. So it's not just about money, it is partially about money. For example, with 10 of our municipalities around Massachusetts that are now going to be permitted to place a moratorium on new fossil fuel infrastructure. That's great. Concord and Acton are two of them. That should be a source of pride for our district. We need to be expanding that. There's no reason that we need new fossil fuel dependent buildings, especially residential buildings in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
So the energy bill, of course, did get through, and part of it was to allow 10 cities or towns that passed the requirements to stop the installation of gas or oil in new construction, and the funding for that bill, we have over $6 billion in the rainy day fund, in the stabilization fund right now. We still have another couple of $1 billion that we haven't expended. We may have to give, it looks like we will have to give $3 billion back to the taxpayers that we should under the statute that, long story short, I think that we have the funding right now to do a lot, to really move forward. And I was able to get funding for one of my towns for a sustainability director and I look forward to in the next couple of years to a lot of funding coming through.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
Yeah, I think a lot was addressed in this bill, but there's still a lot left to do. One thing is, I know that's been talked about for many years now, is the Extended Producer Responsibility Act, which would require manufacturers to have a plan for what happens when their products are no longer usable. You know, how they're going to take them back and how they're going to reuse the parts. And I think that would be a huge benefit to have that implemented. There's also, a lot of incentives for electric vehicles and more efficient home appliances. So I think there's a lot of these things that can come forward and help us have a better planet. One thing that I've mentioned, that I've said before, is the pandemic showed us that we can do things quickly. We can move on a dime. We've seen so many things that we didn't know how to do a few years ago, but we know how to now. And I think we can use some of that initiative to move things forward to help make a more sustainable planet.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
So we are grateful for that bill to be, being in place, but we need to address the fact that the largest of our share of our green gas emissions comes from transportation. And as a state representative, I want to be working toward getting funding to reduce these emissions by electrifying our transportation in our towns. So one of the things that I'm looking at as a source for funding is the fair share amendment. So, and I will work to make sure that our communities in the meantime, have EV charging ready infrastructure. So if there's a way that we can support the local governments to do that, we have towns that are already starting through their home rule petitions to work toward that, including Acton and Concord. And so in addition to that, make sure that the dwellings or the school buses are funded through other budget lines to be electrified and again reduce emissions. And the same applies to our regional transportation, the rail transportation. We have the Fitchburg line and other regional lines. If we can support them through electrification, transit-centric housing as well. So there is a lot that can be done through other ways to work toward our goals to fight climate change.
Thank you, Vivian. All right, our last question has to do with economic and social justice. Public transportation is a huge issue, as you know. Massachusetts will receive a lot of money from the federal government for public transportation in the new Inflation Reduction Act. How can the legislature best use federal and Commonwealth money to solve state and community public transportation needs? And we'll start this question with Carmen.
Well, thank you. So I think we need to extend rail service out to Western Massachusetts, and not only extend it out to Western Massachusetts, but also north and south, so that cities and towns to the north and south of main rails can also access rail service. We need to electrify our all of our commuter rail service and all of our public transportation service, really. Not only one reason is reliability. I mean, constantly, right now, for example, on the Fitchburg line, an engine will need service every 5,000 miles. An electric engine would go 100,000 miles before it needed service or break down. So we also need to put up the electric charging stations in all of our communities. Thank you.
And Pat?
Well, one thing, I'm based on this question, I'm thinking here now, why the MBTA, when they're closing down the orange line and part of the green line for the next month, why they're not going further? I mean, they're going to put in new tracks, and then we're just going to have the same dirty old subway trains that are going to be running on those tracks. You would think that they would take this into account. I don't know if anything else needs to be done to the tracks in order to have more efficient cars running on them, but you would hope that this would also be taken into account. I also think that public transportation in general needs to be more affordable and more accessible across the whole state. And perhaps there needs to be a needs-based program where the amount somebody pays for the commuter rail, for example, is based on their income and their needs, and where they might be going to or coming from, rather than just a flat amount. I know the commuter rail does have a discount for seniors, but it's lots of other folks too that need help paying for their transportation.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
So transportation is a critical infrastructure that drives our socioeconomic development. So, but our public transportation in our district is very disjointed and incomplete. So we have circulating buses in some areas provided by, the lower RTA or individual towns. But we can do more. There are many common destinations that lack public transit service, and there is little service between our towns in the district, and so I want to focus on that. I think it would help the larger audiences and local businesses if we make it easier for residents to connect, within the towns. And this can also be done through rideshare programs. I have lived in 2 areas that have used these rideshare programs, both in Uganda and Hawaii. And we could model something like Hawaii does, that is managed by the counties, by the local government, to get, that is also voucher. You can buy vouchers at cheaper, it's cheaper costs. So sorry about that. But yes, I think, we need to fix transportation.
Thank you, Vivian. And Simon?
There have been so many important ideas and concepts shared very eloquently by the other candidates. I'd like to focus on a couple of ideas and challenges that I've heard a lot about and experienced myself from residents in our district. One is the Route 2 Rotary. We need an overpass at the Route 2 Rotary, period. It's stifling economic development and prosperity along Great Road in Acton and in West Concord. It is contributing way too much to climate change. It's making a commute really difficult, both for people in our district and further out in Fitchburg. It's affecting property values. We need our next state rep to be focusing on that. We also need a North Station, South Station connector. There are so many residents of our district that either drive to work in South Boston or cannot get to work there at all, or can't get a job that they otherwise would be able to have in the south part of Boston because of the inaccessibility of that part of Boston that affects our district and many other parts of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Simon. All right, that concludes our 1 minute answers questions of questions that we had prepared for the candidates. I suggest we take a 30-second break for a seventh inning stretch. And candidates, please leave your video and sound on so that you'll be ready to go when we're done. And Judith will let us know when the 30 seconds is up. All right, now let's hear what questions our audience members have for our candidates. We will follow the same format. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. Julie, start us off with the first question, please.
Sure, we've got some great questions from our audience here. Being an effective state representative requires far more than good ideas and moral character. Getting things done requires an ability to understand complex issues, to compete for limited resources, and to lead and collaborate with the right people. How are you qualified to do this for our district?
And we'll start this question with Pat.
Thank you for that question. I think it is important that that whoever the next state representative from this district is knows the other representatives in this area so that we can work to bring forward perhaps regional initiatives. As far as working with limited resources, as I mentioned in the beginning, I've been a member of the Chelmsford Select Board for over 13 years. That takes a lot of compromise and a lot of trade-offs and a lot of looking at all the options that you might have as far as financial options and human resource options. So I do have that experience. I'm also a voting member of the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, which is a regional planning agency based in Lowell and includes 8 surrounding towns. I've worked with members of all those communities in order to take the limited resources, particularly transportation and planning resources, to be fair across the entire region.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
So a great question. One of the things that really excites me is that I have seen in our legislature people who have immigrated from different places, people who have not been in government before, get into the legislature and actually secure funding for their communities. This is done collaboratively. I do, one of my strengths is collaboration. As a producer and a host, I have, my strength is reaching out to people across all aisles has really come in handy, and it will come in handy as a legislator, because when we get in there, we're going to work to solve the issues that are affecting our community, whether it is water quality, housing, it will, and that is going to be my focus, to work with other legislators in the district, because we are for towns. So reaching out to the other representatives like Mr. Gentile here, just to work together to secure the funding that we need for the towns that we are representing. And thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
When I think about that question and how it relates to my personal background, I think about how I started when I was 23 years old, what's now a national nonprofit. I scraped together from fundraising about $75,000, hired one employee, and then over the course of about a dozen years, scaled that to a national organization that fully employs over 60 people, is responsible for over 3,000 children and their academic advancement in 5 different cities. Ushering that program through times of austerity, through times of rapid growth, through times where we had cash to burn, and other times where we were really scraping by. Doing that prioritization, that compromise, that collaboration with people in cities with very different backgrounds, I think that will prepare me well for this job, which often there is a competitive aspect in politics, in the legislature, as well as a collaborative aspect, and an aspect of collaborating and understanding what's happening at the federal level. I think I'm prepared to take a holistic approach to all of those aspects of this job.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
Thank you. So 9 years ago, I joined the Council on Aging in Sudbury. I'm still a member. And the reason I joined was because I had an interest in home care. I wanted home care services to be more available. And in the legislature, I've served on the Committee on Elder Affairs now for 8 years. And I've spearheaded the successful effort to raise the wages of home care workers. Last year, the Home Care Alliance of Massachusetts made me the Legislator of the Year for my efforts, which are continuing. During the pandemic, I saw that our students with the most disabilities aging out at age 22 needed educational compensatory services. They weren't going to get them. I was able, with other legislators, to put together a $10 million appropriation to fund their compensatory education services. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next question.
Okay.
What role, if any, do you see for restorative justice in the administration of the civil and criminal justice systems?
And we'll start this question with Vivian.
I love this question. I was raised in a household where my mother was a mediator. So restorative justice is my default setting when it comes to resolving conflicts in our community. So with that said, when I volunteered with the prosecuting attorney's office in Hawaii, one of the project we worked on was restorative justice, because we believe that is the best way to keep communities together and productive. So as a legislator, I want to focus on that. And I'm so proud to see that some of our police departments here in the towns have the jail diversion programs. So if expanding programs like that in our criminal justice system is going to go a long way in making our towns stronger and champions of just restorative and creating harmony. And most of the people who are incarcerated happen to be people of color for one reason or the other. So I want to break that cycle.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
I spent most of my career at the Justice Department in a public corruption unit, but I detailed for 9 months in the U.S. Attorney's Office in DC. And as for part of that time, I was responsible for managing the drug court. And I saw just an incredible amount of rehabilitation that was happening there that I wasn't seeing on the general docket. I really think that we need to lean hard into our diversion programs, which ought to, in my view, involve a large dose of restorative justice. I think we have a huge opportunity to lead the way on that in Massachusetts. It's not the only criminal justice reform we need. We need to talk about bail reform and a number of sentencing reform and a number of other things. But I do think that restorative justice has a really big role to play. And I'd like to see that expanded throughout our court and justice system.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
So I've been a criminal defense counsel for 30 years. And in the previous session, we had a criminal justice reform bill of the greatest reforms in a generation, so that we have restorative justice being implemented in courts throughout the Commonwealth now. Bail, people being held for bail, it's very limited. People being held on bail these days. It's really gone away for the most part. So we've really made some great strides in the Commonwealth through that bill. And I will say that Marion Ryan in Middlesex County led the way. Before that bill was passed, she had already established a lot of these reforms in Middlesex County. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
Yeah, I think there has to be a better way than just sending to jail for sometimes an indefinite term people that commit what could be called low-level crimes. I applaud like Rachel Rollins for what she did in Suffolk County as far as refusing even to prosecute some crimes because there was so many more important crimes that needed so much more attention. I think sometimes the worst thing that can happen is to have someone go to jail that doesn't really deserve to go to jail, and And then while they're there, they pick up the worst habits. And then when they get out, then they also get out and don't have anywhere to go. Society, doesn't accept them anymore, and it's harder for them to get a job. It's harder for them to start a family. So I think whatever we can do to help make it more fair for the people that are charged with these crimes, to help them move on with their lives and make their lives better.
Thank you, Pat.
The next question, do you think the legislature has a role to play in the current debates going on over what schools should and shouldn't teach? For example, the role of race in American history or gender identity, for example.
Oh, I'm sorry. Starting with Simon.
Yes, I do. I do think that the state legislature has a role to play. There's an important bill that's been proposed in terms of anti-racist education. I also think that with regard to gender identity and the gay rights movement, the LGBTQ movement generally, there are important lessons for our students to draw from that movement, because it was one of the most successful civil rights movements that we've ever had in American history. And so I would like to see that taught, the history of that movement. I think that the benefits of those learnings reverberate far beyond gender studies and better understanding in terms of gender, but also to other types of civil rights movements that our young people should be fortified with and understand.
Thank you, Simon. Carmen?
So I believe the legislature does have a role, and it's exercise. It exercised that responsibility in the session that's just ending now. We passed legislation so that every high school student will take part in a class, not necessarily on the Holocaust itself, but on other genocide. The subject matter being genocide, and every high school student would do a project or do a paper or do some study on genocide. And we put together a trust fund so that school districts could draw from that fund to build their programs, to develop their programs. I have a high respect for our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And also, I have a huge respect for the First Amendment. And I see it being trampled on in some other states, most notably in Florida right now. I don't see that happening in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
I think the legislature has a role to play, although I don't think it should be a detailed in the weeds role to play. I think we hear mostly about when the legislatures get involved, it's to eliminate certain curricula from the schools, as Carmen just alluded to. And I think that's not where the legislature should play a role. I think the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, they're the experts in this field, and I think they should be the ones that actually define and set up the curriculum that needs to be followed. Obviously, there has to be input, but I guess it depends on how finally into the details you're looking for the legislature to go.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
Yeah, as a mother of children who are biracial, I get asked questions that I wouldn't want a child to ever ask their parent. So I think, I want to support, there's a proposed legislation, a coalition on, anti-racist education in school. This is just one of the things that could be done at the legislative body. Just because once something goes through the legislature, then it's going to protect or influence children across the state, not even just within that town. And children interact. So the more children we can educate in the same curricula, the better for them to understand the complexities of race and other marginalization, forms of marginalization in our community. Not to make America look bad, but to understand the challenges and lift each other up as we go along, even as children.
Thank you, Vivian. Julie, it looks like we have time for one more question.
Okay, let's see. There's so many good ones. This is a good one. What one thing do you hope to accomplish in your first year as our state rep?
And we're going to start this one with Carmen.
Well, I'd like to really get to know the folks in Concord and Lincoln. I hope to represent them for the first time. People in the other communities in the district are fairly familiar with me, but I'd really like to get to know the folks in Lincoln and Concord. I've already met with some of the town officials and some of the residents, and I look forward to meeting a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Pat?
I'll kind of piggyback on that. I'd like to set up a protocol like Corey Atkins used to do when she was in this seat, where quarterly she would meet with officials from all 4 communities in the district, and she would talk to them about legislation that was coming up, that had been passed, that was on track to be passed, to keep us all updated on what was going on, how she was voting on certain things, and sometimes she would ask the opinion of the town officials, how a certain legislation might impact them, what the consequences might be. So I would set up some kind of program like that. As far as the general accomplishments, I would like to see the state be a better partner financially with the cities and towns. All 4 of the towns in this district fund over 80% of their municipal budget from the local real estate tax. And that's basically unsustainable. And it impacts those that can afford at least the most. So I would like for the state to be a little bit more generous with budget, with revenue excesses they have, and maybe even take some from that rainy day fund to spread around the state.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian?
I want to do what I'm already doing, but on a larger scale. I connect with the community. So I want to just expand on that connection and create functional meetings so that with local government, with organizations, and with residents. And that will be definitely through media and other formats. In addition to that, I want to make sure that we support our local media. During the pandemic, people got their information through local media, but it's the forgotten, sector. And I want to plead to fellow legislators to support them so that we can increase access to information to the residents, but also create civic awareness and engagement for our public meetings and our both locally, statewide, and elsewhere. And in addition to that, I just want to introduce myself to fellow legislators so that we can work together for the communities that we love.
And Simon.
Thanks, Anita. If I have to choose one thing, it would be to quadruple the number of municipalities that are permitted to place a moratorium on new fossil fuel-based infrastructure. I did my thesis on residential energy thermodynamics back in 2008. And back then, we were perfectly capable of building all electric buildings. We need to be expanding the permission structure for our municipalities to place that moratorium. We are living in a climate crisis, and on day 1, day 2, day 365, I will be focused on that.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Julie. And thank you, audience. Those were very thoughtful questions. And now, candidates, we would like to hear your closing statements. You have 1 minute each, and we will start with, I'm sorry, I need to go back. We will start with Pat.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks to Concord Indivisible for hosting this forum and for the other candidates being here. It was good to meet Carmen. And as I mentioned in my opening, I feel like I know municipalities. I speak the language of the legislature, And I'm sure I don't speak it as well as Carmen does, but I know within a short period of time I would get up to speed very quickly. I think the biggest thing that we've heard tonight is that none of the problems can be solved without some money going towards them. So as I mentioned earlier, one of my priorities would be to have the state deliver more funds to the municipalities. The municipalities know best how to spend those funds, and they know where to get the best bang for the buck, as it were. So I respectfully ask for your vote on Election Day, September 6th. Pat Wotjas, I'm running for the 14th Middlesex District of the House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Vivian.
So I am so honored to be on the same platform with all the candidates, and thank you to Concord Indivisible. So what I do not, I have the experience, whether it's in local government or connecting with the community through media, to do the job from day one on Beacon Hill. I have worked in legislative bodies. It might not have been here, but when legislation is legislation, and we're all working to solve the issues that are affecting our communities. So I am dedicated to partnering with you all. And I am humbly asking for your vote. I will fight for the girl child. I'm a mother. I will fight for the woman. I'll fight to ban fossil fuels in our community and bring in board, experiences that I have seen in Hawaii, implementing or proposing an environmental court. So I humbly request for your vote on September 6th. I will really invest in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Simon?
Thank you to Concord Indivisible for contributing to the heartbeat of our democracy in this and so many other ways. Thank you to my other esteemed candidates. Thanks to everybody who's watching. The residents of our district are facing diverse hardships, whether it's the affordability of aging with dignity in our district, the quality of our water, transportation, mental health care, or a general pessimism about government's ability to fix anything. I've never backed down from a tough challenge, whether it's been in the classroom with my special education students, ushering a national nonprofit through a pandemic, or holding powerful people to account in the federal courts of the United States. If you send me to Beacon Hill as our next state rep, I will do everything that I can to draw upon the shared wisdom and resources of our community in addition to my own experiences. And I will never forget that from the very beginning, from American independence to abolition to the Affordable Care Act to marriage equality, the rest of the nation has looked not just to Massachusetts, but to our community for leadership. And leadership is what I intend to provide as your next state rep. My name is Simon Cataldo, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Simon. And Carmen?
Well, thank you. I want to thank Concord Indivisible for hosting us tonight, and thank Vivian, Simon, and Pat for participating with me. I also want to thank everyone who joined in with us this evening, as well as those who might view and listen to a recording of the forum at a later date. I look forward to working with each of my fellow candidates in the future, hopefully 2 of us in the House and the others active in the community. It is an honor and a privilege to serve the people of the 13th Middlesex District and our nation's first and oldest legislature, a legislative body very well respected and looked to by legislators in many other states. I want to thank the voters of Wayland, Marlborough, Framingham, and Sudbury, who gave me this opportunity to serve, and ask that they and voters in Concord and Lincoln vote to re-elect me in September and November and return me to the House to complete the work that I've begun. Thank you very much.
Carmen, back to you.
Sorry, Anita, you froze, but I think everybody made their statement. So thank you, candidates. We've reached the end of our time together, and we really appreciate your participation today. Let's take a moment to thank these 4 dedicated, talented, truly patriotic individuals for their incredible personal sacrifice and extraordinary effort that they have put into running their campaigns. And to our dedicated CI forum team, Anita Saville, Judith Herman, Chris Myra, Julie Hirschler, Denise Gazicki, Phil Villers, Diane Proctor, and Barbara Head. What a tremendous team you have been, and we are grateful to you. We're grateful to you all, and we are grateful to you, audience, for caring and giving us your time this evening. Voting day is September 6th, and we'd like to remind you all to please vote by mail or in person as soon as possible. So Denise, will you please unlock our videos and mics so that we can all give a round of applause for our fabulous candidates? Yahoo, thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. We thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.